that feeling. It's like this quiet whisper, isn't it, in the background of our busy lives? A sense that something's missing. An inner kind of hollowness that can feel strangely, well, everywhere. You probably know it, right?
Yeah.
That sense of just going through the motions. You're surrounded by this world buzzing with activity, yet somehow you feel untethered, a bit adrift.
It really is remarkable how many people today in our modern world are grappling with this profound sense of inner emptiness. It genuinely touches people from all sorts of backgrounds.
Yeah. And in this deep dive, we're not just going to, nod at it. We really want to explore what might be lying underneath. We've looked at some compelling ideas about how this feeling shows up and also what depth psychology might offer as perspective. Our goal really is to shed some light on this experience that seems so widespread, to help you maybe connect with what might be happening inside and perhaps offer some paths for your own quiet thought.
Exactly. We want to provide a kind of framework for understanding this feeling. It's often so elusive, isn't it? We're drawing on thoughtful observations about, well, the human psyche, rather than trying to give simple fixes.
Okay, right. Let's start to unpack this then. One of the first signs, maybe, that this feeling of emptiness is more than just a bad mood. It can show up in our connections. Specifically, a lack of real satisfaction in relationships.
That's interesting because it's not necessarily about how many people you know. It's about the nature of those connections. You might find yourself with lots of people around, but still feel this deep sense of being alone.
Exactly. Think about those conversations where you're just, on autopilot, not really there. Or maybe dating someone, but not out of real feeling, more like a fear of being rejected or just lonely. It might seem normal, but it could actually be pointing to something deeper.
And this connects to that Harvard study of adult development. It had such a powerful insight. It found that the quality of our relationships, the emotional intimacy, the support you feel, feeling truly heard, that has a much bigger impact on life satisfaction than just the number of friends or contacts.
So if that feeling of emptiness rings true for you, it could be really valuable to maybe just reflect on the relationships you're putting energy into. Are they actually nourishing you? Or could some of them be, maybe without realizing it, adding to that inner void?
Which brings up a really crucial point about creating space. By consciously letting go of connections that consistently leave you feeling unseen or just drained, you potentially make room for relationships that can offer real substance.
That makes sense. Another sign which feels closely linked is overdependence. That one really stood out, that feeling of needing someone else to sort of fill that gap inside.
Yeah, if we connect that back to the underlying emptiness, you can see how it might manifest as this deep neediness in how we relate to others. There's often a tendency to look outside for external validation, for a sense of wholeness through partners or friends.
Right. It's almost like jumping from one relationship to the next, kind of hoping this time this person will finally make it all okay, make you feel complete.
And at the heart of that pattern, often, is a real fear of being alone. And maybe a sense of self that feels a bit fragile, not really anchored unless you're in a relationship. Your identity can get really tied up with your partner, making being alone feel like losing yourself.
And even if someone does give you that temporary boost, make you feel good about yourself for a bit. That core feeling of emptiness, it tends to stick around, doesn't it? It's like putting a bandage on something that needs deeper attention. Addressing the symptom, not the cause.
Precisely. External validation gives you a temporary lift, sure. But that lasting fulfillment, that really has to come from within.
Okay. Then there's the experience of perpetual boredom. I suspect a lot of people can relate to this one. That feeling like nothing really grabs your interest anymore.
It's interesting, this kind of persistent boredom, it can often be just the surface layer of a deeper feeling of meaninglessness. It's not just about lacking things to do, it's more like a lack of inner engagement with life itself.
Yeah, that feeling of potential just sitting there, unused. Of just, ticking boxes without any real spark or purpose. It can be incredibly disheartening.
And when you look closer at this kind of boredom, you often find there's a lack of those things that make life feel vibrant. Things like genuine engagement, challenges that stretch you, chances for real personal growth, and that sense of moving forward with purpose.
So that constant boredom might not just be laziness or lethargy. It could be a signal that something more fundamental is missing. Moving on, we also looked at emotional numbness. This one can be a bit tricky to spot, I think.
It can be. From the outside, someone might just seem sad or maybe a bit negative.
Yeah.
But internally, the experience is often a distinct lack of feeling. An emotional detachment, almost an apathy.
Right, like the color has drained out of everything. Where you used to feel highs and lows, now it's just flat. But you highlighted an important difference between this and just temporary detachment, didn't you?
Yes, that's key.
Right.
Many of us go through periods of feeling detached, maybe as a way to cope with stress or something difficult that's usually short-term. But a persistent numbness, one that really hangs around, that can indicate you're becoming aware, maybe unconsciously, of that deeper emptiness. It's almost like the emotional system has gone quiet in response to this inner void.
Wow, that's a powerful and kind of unsettling way to put it. Another sign that really resonated was feeling profoundly alone and isolated, even when you're actually around people.
The weight of that internal emptiness, that lack of inherent meaning, it can create a real barrier to connecting with others, like an invisible wall, you know?
So you feel disconnected from people you care about, struggling with this deep loneliness that just gets in the way of forming real emotional bonds.
And this often shows up in behavior too. Withdrawing from social things, canceling plans a lot, wanting to be alone for long stretches. It can become a cycle, can't it? The emptiness fuels the isolation, and the isolation just makes the emptiness feel worse.
That sounds like a really tough cycle to break. Then there's this other thing, this longing for something more. But you can't quite put your finger on what that more actually is. It's just this vague ache.
This often points towards a possible disconnect from your authentic self. When that vague yearning pops up, it might suggest you're living in a way that isn't quite aligned. Not aligned with your deepest values or your real purpose or what you genuinely desire.
Like you're not really sure who you are at your core anymore or what truly matters to you. You're just sort of exist.
And until that connection with the inner self is somehow reestablished, until that sense of personal meaning is rediscovered, that feeling of emptiness is likely to stick around. It's like a signal from your psyche saying, something's out of alignment here.
And this next one is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Having what looks like success on the outside, the job, the house, whatever, but still feeling deeply unhappy inside. That classic scenario of external success hiding internal dissatisfaction.
Yes, and this really highlights the crucial difference between desires that maybe society or others push on us and the kind of fulfillment that comes from our own internal values. We might achieve all these external markers of success only to realize they don't actually resonate with what truly matters to us deep down.
It's like climbing a ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall.
Right.
So what's the key takeaway here?
I think the essential insight is the journey, and it often is a demanding one of figuring out your own core values, your unique mission, if you like. Real fulfillment rarely comes from chasing someone else's idea of a good life.
This leads us into a really fascinating perspective on this whole issue of emptiness, especially how it ties into our relationships. It suggests that what we're often feeling is a kind of unspoken existential challenge in modern life.
It's an interesting take. The perspective suggests that many people today aren't necessarily dealing with clear-cut conditions, but rather a profound loss of personal meaning, a kind of separation from their own inner symbolic world, the soul, you could say.
And it argues that this internal split inevitably affects our relationships, right? We start unconsciously looking to others to fill that void.
Precisely. When we haven't really cultivated a strong connection with our own inner resources, we can unknowingly project our unmet needs, our expectations, onto people close to us. And that creates a pretty shaky foundation for relationships.
So when those expectations aren't met, when the other person doesn't magically fix that inner emptiness, the relationship can really suffer. But this view suggests it's not necessarily love that's failing.
No. Often, what felt like love in those situations was maybe more like a fantasy, a projection of our own unfulfilled stuff. The disappointment comes when the real person inevitably doesn't match up to that projected ideal.
And the core issue, from this perspective, often isn't the other person at all.
No.
It's within us, in those parts of ourselves we haven't acknowledged or integrated.
This is a really key insight. Instead of constantly looking outside for validation, for completion through someone else, this perspective suggests a more fulfilling path. And maybe a way to lessen that emptiness involves understanding and integrating these less conscious parts of ourselves.
It's almost like we're trying to navigate life with missing pieces, and we expect someone else to provide them, when actually the work is about discovering those pieces within ourselves. Which brings us to this idea of the illusion of external completeness.
Right, and this is where societal stories often have a big influence. We're told from a young age, often, that there's someone out there who will just complete us.
You see it everywhere, don't you? In films, songs. This romantic ideal of finding your other half. But this perspective offers a different way to look at it.
From this viewpoint, chasing completeness in another person can actually be a way of avoiding engagement with our own inner world. It's sort of sidestepping the inner work needed for real personal wholeness.
And when a relationship starts from that place of need, rather than from two whole individuals coming together, well, it can lead to problems.
Indeed. It can easily drift into possessiveness, maybe attempts to control things, and ultimately suffering. Often fueled by those unconscious projections we were just talking about. We're not really seeing the other person clearly. We're seeing a reflection of our own unintegrated bits.
So when we feel disappointed in a relationship, when the other person doesn't live up to that projection.
This perspective suggests that disappointment can actually be seen as your own psyche taking back those projections. It might feel uncomfortable, sure, but it holds this potential for growth, a chance to see what you've been projecting and start that inner journey.
So real wholeness isn't something we get from someone else. It's something we cultivate inside ourselves through inner integration.
Precisely. And this process, it involves shifting from looking for external fixes to fostering an internal reconciliation, bringing together the different parts of our own psyche.
And that's not always easy or comfortable, is it? It often means facing things about ourselves we'd rather not look at.
Absolutely. This journey means integrating those fragmented bits, the conscious and the unconscious, the face we show the world, and the shadow parts we might deny. It often requires confronting difficult emotions, parts of ourselves we've repressed.
But the potential payoff of doing that inner work seems pretty significant.
Ultimately, yes. This inner integration allows us to relate to others from a place of wholeness, not from lack. Relationships can then transform. From attempts to fill a void into genuine connections between two more fully realized people.
It really seems to boil down to having the courage to face yourself, doesn't it? To stop running outwards and finally turn towards your own inner world.
That feels like a fundamental truth. No external relationship, no matter how loving or intense, can really give you lasting peace if you're constantly avoiding your own inner landscape. The healing you're looking for is fundamentally an internal process.
It's in those moments of self-reflection, isn't it? In embracing that inner quiet that the real work of understanding and integrating ourselves happens.
In relationships, in this light, can act as powerful mirrors. They reflect back our own internal imbalances. Feeling unseen or unheard by others might actually mirror how we've been neglecting or silencing our own inner voice.
So that feeling of emptiness, as unsettling as it is, can maybe be seen as an invitation, a call to turn inward, explore our own psyche, reconnect with a deeper sense of self. It marks the start of potentially profound inner change. We also touched upon that feeling where things you used to enjoy just don't feel fun anymore. That feels like another really significant way this deeper emptiness can show up.
Yes, and it goes beyond just being bored. It feels like a deeper message from our unconscious, signaling a disconnect, not just from activities, but from our authentic selves, our real desires.
You know that feeling. Hobbies or passions that used to light you up suddenly feel like a chore. Even things that should be pleasurable feel hollow.
And societal pressures often play into this, don't they? We're frequently pushed towards external goals, superficial pleasures, which can leave us feeling empty even if we look successful on the outside. This feeling, you could see it as a direct call to start that inward journey, to reconnect with something more meaningful than just surface-level stuff.
It's interesting how our first reaction is often to just seek more distractions, right? New hobbies, more entertainment, anything to avoid facing that inner void.
That avoidance of stillness is really telling. Stillness kind of forces us to face those uncomfortable truths inside. But it's precisely in that facing, in that stillness, that the way forward can start to reveal itself.
It's almost like that feeling of nothing being fun anymore is a sign that we've maybe outgrown an old version of ourselves, and we need to figure out who we're becoming now, like a potential identity shift happening.
Precisely. It points to a need for inner evolution. And the answer isn't just chasing more fleeting pleasures. It's about re-engaging with what genuinely brings meaning and passion to your life.
So how do we actually do that, practically speaking? How do we shift from fearing the emptiness to seeing it as that potential doorway you mentioned?
Well, the first crucial step is probably that shift in perspective, realizing that inner emptiness often comes from being cut off from our deepest, truest self. Society often pushes us towards external achievements, overlooking this vital inner connection.
And like we've said, no amount of changing things on the outside is going to truly satisfy if that fundamental disconnect remains. It often boils down to that identity question.
Exactly. which is why making time for stillness, for introspection, is so vital. It gives us the chance to cut through the noise and rediscover what actually matters to us. It's about reconnecting with our own intrinsic desires, the things that make us feel alive.
It sounds like we almost need to rekindle our curiosity, to not be afraid to explore new things, maybe let go of routines that just drain our passion now.
Exactly. It means consciously creating that space for quiet, exploring without needing immediate answers, maybe reflecting on what used to bring joy, and just being open to the transformation that comes with real self-discovery.
And finally, we touched on this profound idea that meaning isn't something we just find lying around, it's something we actively create. That really reframes this whole conversation about emptiness, doesn't it?
It's a fundamental shift, yes. Meaning isn't some external thing waiting to be discovered. It's an internal experience we generate within our own lives. That process of inner integration we talked about, aligning with your authentic nature, that naturally leads to a more meaningful life.
So instead of waiting passively for meaning to just show up, we need to focus on how we can bring meaning into what we're already doing.
Yes, partly. It involves engaging deeply with our experiences, which is often the opposite of the shallow interactions common today. Cultivating those states of flow where you're deeply immersed in something, that's often linked to fulfillment.
And it's not just about personal fulfillment either, is it? There's also the role of contributing to something bigger than just ourselves.
Absolutely. Acts of service, contributing in some way, that can create a powerful sense of purpose. And again, engaging with our inner world through reflection or maybe therapy helps us reclaim lost parts of ourselves, cultivate wholeness, which is essential for creating meaning.
So in the end, that feeling of emptiness isn't meaningless itself. It's actually an invitation to evolve, to reconnect, and to actively shape a meaningful life from the inside out.
Precisely. It's a call to shift from being a passive observer of your life to becoming an active creator of a life that truly resonates with who you are.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, the core message that really comes through is that this journey, understanding and navigating inner emptiness, it's deeply personal. And the first steps really lie in that quiet self-reflection.
It's about turning our attention inward, maybe really inward for the first time in a long time, and exploring the terrain of our own inner world.
And with that in mind, perhaps here's a final thought for you listening. What small, gentle step could you take today? Just one small thing to turn inward. To begin exploring that inner landscape, maybe trusting that the insights you're looking for are more likely to bubble up from within than appear from some external fix.
It does take courage, facing ourselves honestly, compassionately, but it's right there in that act of facing that the possibility for real connection with ourselves and then with others truly starts to open up.
Here's to your continuing journey of self-discovery.